Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to episode 7 of the Turn Over the Tape podcast, a Gold Coast Suns podcast. My name is Keegan, and today I'm joined, as always, by Matt. Matt, how are you?
Yeah, really good, really good.
Also, just a heads up off the top, Matt's computer has currently bricked it, and so he's here on his phone. So if the audio quality is a bit sort of here or there, that is the reason. Hopefully, we can find a workaway around coming for next week. But this week we'll work with a phone and we'll just go from there. But without any further ado, let's get into it. And as we can see, as you can probably tell, we're a bit flat today because the Suns did go down again on the weekend, 59-70. Overall, Matt, what were your thoughts overall? I know you've only watched 3/4 of the game, so from the 3/4 that you've seen, what can you tell? What were your thoughts?
I wish we were more skilled is sort of what comes to mind.
Yeah.
And I also get the impression that it is it always 80% humidity at Metricon? Is that just only allowed to be 80%?
Yeah, it feels like that. With the skills, 100% correct. I listened to the press conference with Jew after the game the next morning, and that was basically his thoughts were that the skills just aren't up to scratch, and that the skills are that they can't hit a target at the best of times. There are a few absolute like major offenders. Matt, who do you think was sort of up there with players that probably couldn't hit a target at all over the night?
I mean, I hate beating up on the same players, but there are a couple of moments that I know DMAC would like to have back. There was a couple of wobbly balls that Ainsworth put forward that were just sort of just bang and hope rather than anything. They are sort of the two that really come to mind, but I thought our defense wasn't too bad in terms of their kick efficiency. The forwards didn't really get a ton of opportunity to be efficient with it. Yeah, I don't want to keep beating up on the same people, Keegs.
I can do that for you. Yeah, Ainsworth was horrible by foot. He couldn't hit target. There's one that definitely sticks out in the back of my mind was we're running out of 50. We linked together a few nice handballs. He got it running through the center square. He had to kick it, I think, 25 meters, probably at a 45-degree angle to hit someone on the forward flank. And he absolutely overshot the kick to the point that a Carlton player sort of just walked over and sort of marked it on his chest. So he was a big offender. I think just overall, we had our colours lowered as far as sort of disposal efficiency. Harbrow again, but we know that's the issue with him, that his disposal efficiency is just not. It's just not there. He only had 5 touches, but from memory, there were a few that were pretty poor. But anyway, that's just how it goes. I suppose. Just a pretty dirty night. Do you think the conditions play into that?
I mean, how can they not? There were a couple of times early in the game where it looked like we actually wanted to use the Gold Coast Sun Highway as has been. And there are a couple of opportunities where, just efficient use of the ball, and we could have gone coast to coast in like 15 seconds, but it's just there's a dud handball in there somewhere. Someone's put under more pressure than they need to, and then the kick comes and it's panicked and it's to a 2-on-1, and then suddenly they're rebounding.
That's what I feel as far as like if you're a professional footballer, you should be able to hit a handball 5 meters away. Like that shouldn't be. That's a non-negotiable. Like if you can't hit a handball to a person 5 meters away from you, then there's some serious questions that need to be asked about your viability playing professional sport. But
that being said, though, in terms of like marking efficiency, I understand that if there's heat on you in greasy conditions, like it's another thing to be marking the ball. So there are a couple of times where you see easy marks go down, but they're far more forgivable than watching a kick fly over the player's head by 15 meters.
100%. That's 100%. I think with the marking, I'm more forgiving of that in Gold Coast evenings because of the humidity, because of the greasy conditions. I'm much more forgiving of that than I am for missing a 20-meter kick to someone that's by themselves on a lead. I'm much more forgiving of that. So we talked about like how we could have moved it quickly. And I think I mentioned to you on the night, I think I might have sent you a message or something, that this is the first time that I've sort of questioned the tactics that Stewie Jew's employed. And that's not to say I want him out as coach before anyone jumps up and down. That's not to say that at all. But I feel like this slow kick mark style of going 15, 20 meter kicks on 45s to sort of move it to almost chess your way or checkers your way up the field. I don't think that's the way we're going to win games. Matt, do you have any opinion on that?
It's such a tough one because I like the run and dash that the Suns have when they're at their best, and it just looks like they're going to swarm the entire field. But the one thing that we've sort of consistently lacked over the last 10, 11 years is efficient use of the ball by foot primarily. So, I mean, a game plan that basically focuses on that, in some respects, sort of focuses in on trying to improve that skill trait. So I can't imagine that's what the thinking is, but there's a part of me that thinks that way. But you said it actually in the comments that it's very reminiscent of like Hawthorn circa 2015, really. That was sort of the game style that they were using.
And that's great. It's great if you can kick. Because that Hawthorn team was skilled. They had all these left footers that could hit, absolutely drill a target. But the Suns can't do that. And if you look at the good teams at the moment, the ones that are playing well, look at Sydney we'll pick Sydney as an example, started the season really well and were favoured around our area of the ladder as well. So I'm not picking like a top of the table team from last year. I'm picking a team from this year that was expected to finish around where we were finishing. And if you look at the way they play quickly, they're marking their handballing straight away to someone that's on the move. And I feel like the Suns' first direction is they'll mark the ball and they won't look forward, or there won't be someone running behind to get the handball. They'll look for a kick. They'll look for a kick inboard first. If they can't find one, they'll look for a kick behind them second. And if there's not a kick behind them second, then their third option is bomb it down the line. And because we have no ruckman, that has massive issues and massive knock-on effects to how we move the ball, which has been honestly quite painful for the Carlton game and parts of the Adelaide game that have just passed.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, take like previous Suns teams where the strat has basically been to go out in a blaze of glory, just play running and basically playing that unfettered style of football. And we'd burn out. We'd have like a quarter where we just get absolutely rolled because we're either absolutely gassed or we didn't put the opposition away enough. And I'm sort of wondering if this is Stewie Jew trying to incorporate some sort of mental handbrake that says, hey guys, you don't actually have to be burning all cylinders all the time. Maybe try and take the game into consideration at some point. And then try to find a healthy balance between the two, read the game situation to determine what you should be using. Like, go back to the West Coast game where we were flipping between pretty much all out attack, and then there were some quarters where we were far more reserved and measured. I actually thought we did a pretty good job flipping between the styles. It's just then you compare and contrast to the Adelaide game where it was an absolutely painful watch.
Yeah. And yeah, I think the West Coast game, the round one, is still the best game we've played this season. But the issue is, and I completely understand where you're coming from as far as they're trying to sort of save petrol tickets so we don't burn ourselves out. Just a few points on that. The first thing is, like, we only lost by 11 points, which is fair enough, which is not a bad loss. But honestly, watching it felt like we lost by 40 points. Like, I don't think Carlton were ever in danger. If you even look at the goal scoring, like, we kicked 8 goals, 11. They kicked 9 goals, 16. They could have put another 3 or 4 goals on us quite easily and didn't. So we were sort of quite lucky in that exchange. But the second point would be that, like, we don't want to burn all these petrol tickets. But in the last quarter, our players looked absolutely gassed. Like, I know you haven't
Yeah.
watched it, so you can't comment on it, but I'll fill you in. We get the ball forward very rarely, and probably until the last 3 or 4 minutes of the quarter. It's just living in Carlton's forward 50 because our players are too tired to make the effort to run and make a lead, or they're just not smart enough and they're just bombing it long. Like, to give you an example, halfway through the quarter, the Suns have 5 less rotations to use than Carlton. So it either means the strategy is wearing the players out, the players aren't fit enough, or the players don't have the strategy or the formation or the structure to once it's in our defensive 50 to get it out of our defensive 50. So if it's one of those three things, and if honestly it's not looking like we're not disaster, we're not getting belted by 100 points. I completely accept that, but I would rather lose 15 goals to 20 goals than lose 8 goals to 10 goals, as an example.
Sure. But the only thing that I would like to hear your opinion on is, how much do you factor in the fact that the mids probably have to burn a bit more petrol to account for the fact that we were just going to lose 4 out of 5 hitouts?
Yeah, that's a point. I actually think the Rucks played quite well. I remember sort of sitting there going, Caleb Gray and Burgess are doing an okay job. Now, they probably didn't win, and that's probably to be expected. But I don't think that plays into it too much, outside of the fact that all the players have to do is basically just man up at the clearances. They've got and the Suns won the clearances, so that's clearly a part of the game that works, that we've got working correctly. Is we're winning clearances even without a dominant ruckman. So if we're winning that, I can't imagine that there's too many issues there. But again, I think it's just, I don't know what it is. I just think there's a combination of things that currently isn't working at the moment. That sort of just maybe just getting in the way of each other. So what did you think of the Rucks? Because I've already given my opinion. I thought they were okay. From what you've seen, what do you think of how the ruckmen have gone?
Well, I mean, we comfortably lost the hitouts, but we won the clearances. So whatever mitigating factors were put in place, they worked. I mean, we won the clearances. How can you say otherwise? And I think that comes down to, players like Took and Greenwood just getting really dirty, right in the coalface, and just plucking the ball out and going from there. I thought they were particularly impressive to help us out. I sort of wonder how much they burnt to try and keep the ledger pretty even in that regard. But I mean, the solution worked, and I can't imagine they'll change it until Zach Smith becomes a thing.
That's going to be a few weeks away yet. So we've got a tough game this week, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. So we'll talk about these skills and the skills that aren't working. Do you think it's time that the Suns put their hands up to the AFL and go, we want no more night games? Because like watching them play at night time, it's not a great watch I can't imagine it's a great watch for neutral, and it's painful to watch as a Suns supporter. Do you think the Suns have to put their hands up and go, look, we don't want any more night games, or if we can avoid night games? Like, I can understand if we had to play maybe 1 or 2 at home, I completely understand, and that's not a problem. But it's just not good viewing, and it doesn't work with our strategy. Our strategy we're trying to employ is tactical, skillful sort of kick mark game. In wet conditions or greasy conditions, that doesn't work. So I don't think the style we're trying to play works for those night games that we are currently playing.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, the first thing you think of is also like the revenue. Like, you can't help but think the night games generally draw more viewers, regardless of the quality of the contest.
Yeah.
Potentially. I don't know. I'm pretty torn on that, because I actually quite like going to the night games. I
completely understand. But then, if that's the case, and if we're going to be playing night games at the Suns, then we need to think of another way to play football, because doing what we're doing.
Your brother is a big advocate of getting like grip balls in rotation for these sort of greasy conditions.
What was that? Sorry,
I
getting
think
what?
as in like so in NRL they have the grip on the ball, so the ball is
Ah, yeah,
easier to
yeah,
catch
yeah, yeah.
in greasy conditions. Whereas the AFL ball is a bar of soap once there's a bit of moisture about.
Yeah.
Um, I think more likely the Suns will go to the AFL saying something like that than giving away probably a decent paying nighttime slot.
Yeah, that's probably a fair point. Who knows? Like I suppose at the end of the day, it's sort of a balancing act because you want night games that probably do bring in a bit more revenue, some like more eyes on screens, bums on seats, all that sort of stuff. Or on the other hand, would you rather have a better chance of winning games? And I think that's something that the club has to sort of weigh up and what they want. And they may not have a choice in it. I'm under
Yeah,
the pretense that they've got a choice in it, and they can say to the AFL, look, we have less night games. But maybe they don't have a choice in it. Maybe the AFL is putting them there for a reason, and you just got to deal with it, which could very well be the case.
yeah.
So sort of the last little bit on the game before we sort of get into our votes. So we saw that Brody was dropped last week, and in my opinion, probably won't be back unless we have a major injury calamity where we basically have to play him. Is there
It
anyone
could
at the
still
moment?
happen.
It could still happen. It's very if we are the Gold Coast Suns. We could all be on a bus and something happens and there's 10 people get injured. So is there anyone that you think maybe in the Will Brody mold of maybe finding their way out of the team and maybe finding it very hard to get back?
Um, yeah, I mean, DMAC always comes to mind. He's a great little tackler, but anytime he sort of has the pill in his hand, you may as well flip a coin as to what the outcome is going to be. He'll either get run down and called ball, or he'll kick it out, or then every now and then he'll do well, right? Like it's not like he's completely abject or anything like that. Um, yeah, DMAC comes to mind. I actually think even though Ainsworth had some moments that he'd love to have back, he also had some moments that were pretty good. And I think enough evidence on his performance suggests that he probably stays in the side for a couple of weeks just to try and get a bit better. I thought
Yeah,
Holman, the game was a little bit fast for him when everyone has the same level of fresh legs as he does.
yeah.
Um, wasn't anywhere near as impactful. I don't know that you drop him. I feel like he's probably earned the right to one more week in that spot at least. But that being said, like another part of me wants to sort of ship Corbett into the side because I know he can clunk a mark.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like I'm looking now at the disposal efficiency of the game, and DMAC was the lowest of the Suns. And
Right.
your call of flipping the coin is very apt because he went at 53.3% disposal efficiency.
There you go.
So if that's and I'll tell you who Lukosius only went at 53.8, so he had a bit of a dirty night as well, admittedly. Um,
Broken nose.
but I feel like you can't really compare those two. I feel like one's a lot more of a staple in the side than the other. Yeah, I think DMAC is if we were fit, if you think about the players we're missing at the moment, like Rao, if he was still fit, yeah, DMAC wouldn't be getting a game. I think Holman is, I think you're right. I think Holman's earned maybe one more maybe go around against the Bulldogs. And if he doesn't perform, then he might go back to the special medical sub, which is fine for him. He's shown over the first 3 weeks that he's great coming in as that medical sub and coming in and doing a job. So they're probably two that I'd probably be keeping an eye on. Who else? Like I'm just looking now. Hardbrow I'd probably move, but because Butterick did his knee, he's probably stuck in the side for a little while yet.
Like who? Like Harbour is basically in for the foreseeable future, right?
Yeah, he can't be moved on. We haven't really got anyone that plays that position that's ready to play senior football. Like you've got Jez McLennan, who for some reason he's been at the ground, he's been at the team for a few years now, and he still can't. He's not played a senior game yet, so something's clearly going on there. You got maybe like a Sharp, who's more of a winger. He can maybe play on a halfback flank, and you might have to get someone like a Will Powell maybe to play a bit more of a shutdown role. You've got someone like maybe Rory Atkins that might be fit quite soon. That maybe can can play a wing, and maybe that means you move Weller back to a halfback flank or something. You'll have to sort of fiddle around with the team a bit. But I feel like there's a few players there that once some fitter players come back, like I think once Atkins comes back in, I think that might be the end of Darcy. Like I think Darcy's great. I think he's done a good job for us through a very tough period. But I just don't think that if you were to put him in a team that's higher up the ladder, I don't think he's a starter for them.
No. Yeah, not at all.
All right, so we've got that out of the way. We've talked about the game, sort of our thoughts on it. Let's move on to our best on ground votes. Now, Matt, you are seeing it off 3 quarters. I can tell you now the 4th quarter is nothing special, so your 3 quarters should be enough for you to judge the best on ground. So, Matt, can I please have your 3? And I'll give my 3, and we'll work down that way. Make it a bit fairer this time.
Fair enough. My best on ground is again Hugh Greenwood. It's just everywhere. Every time you're watching the telecast, he's on the screen somewhere. Just guaranteed.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely in there. I think Greenwood played an absolutely amazing game. Kicked a goal. Actually did a pretty good job on Cripps as well. At times, especially at the start of the game, he was asked to tag Cripps early on, and he did a good job. But no, I didn't even tag him, but sort of just play on him around the clearances. And I thought he did a really good job. 10 tackles again. He's an absolute tackling machine. 10 clearances. Oh, maybe not 10 clearances. I've got that wrong. I think, but yeah, I think overall, I think Greenwood definitely did a serviceable job, and I think that was definitely worthy of the 3 votes. What about your 2 votes?
My 2 votes is going to go to Touk Miller. He was also in the same sort of mold as Greenwood. It felt like he was helping out in the forward line, and then when the ball was deep in defence, there he was, flinging himself at tackles, and then he was popping kicks inside 50. He still seemed like he was half a chance of hitting a target going inside 50. It felt like he was playing every position on the ground at some point. I thought he was very good.
Yeah, I'm probably going to agree with you as well, as boring as it is. I think the thing that Miller's done really well this year that I really love is he can get the ball in a contest, like sort of almost get out of the contest, and he hits a target by foot, which is something that not a lot of our midfielders seem to be able to do at the moment. So I feel like he's probably our best. He's one of our best players at the moment, maybe behind Greenwood and maybe on par with Anderson for our midfield spots. I think he's just such an improved player, and it's great to see him. Played 28 touches on the weekend. He had 13 tackles, so he was definitely in amongst it. So and even one hit out just to really really drive it home. So I think Miller had a really good game as well. And the always hard 1 vote. Matt, who do you have?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's hard to give it to a defender because the ball was coming in messy all night. So it probably wasn't their toughest challenge. And by extension, the forwards were basically being kicked soap. So they couldn't really work a ton with it. So it's hard to sort of look past Anderson, who seemed to get a fair bit of the pill and, set up a couple of really good goals. And whilst his tackling probably could get a little bit better, I thought he was still pretty good.
Yeah, I think Anderson had a good game as well. Do I go with Anderson I think I've got to go with Anderson as well. Sometimes I like going a little bit different just to sort of spice up a bit, but there's not really much more to say. He had a quiet start to the game, but he sort of really picked up towards the end. 30 touches again. So he's coming out of his shell very well as a great player. And when his good mates back, they'll make a very good 1-2 punch in the midfield, and sort of the pressure won't fall as much on Anderson or our young players. And if they can spread the load, especially when Rao comes back, they'll lessen the sort of the burden on likes of Miller and Greenwood as well. And overall, I feel like once we do get that, I feel like we'll be a better team. But I think Anderson, having this sort of more exposed role at the moment, is doing wonders for his development as a player. I think the only thing I could say about Anderson is sometimes he does hack the kick a little bit, where he will sort of just try and clear it out very quickly. And maybe that might be under instructions, but sometimes I feel like he could sort of just take a second and sort of take a breath and then hit a target like Touk would. But I think as a second-year player, you can't be too critical of that. And I think he's just doing his best in in a relatively poor few performances that the Suns have made, I think he's doing a good job.
Yeah.
So that's the Carlton game in the book behind us. We now look forward to the Bulldogs game on Saturday at 4:30. This is the first game I'll be going to live. I'm going with our good friend Steve, which will be an interesting experience, Matt, as you always know. So we were going to the Bulldogs game. The first question I got for you, Matt, is how much are we losing by to the Bulldogs?
Oh, I love that sense of optimism, Keegs. Yeah, we're probably going to be shelving our optimism for the foreseeable future. I don't know. This feels like it could be a bloodbath. But that being said, we are employing something of a game plan that is designed to stymie scoring at times. So let's be optimistic and say we just lose by 5 goals.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking similar-ish. I think actually, if we were playing another team at Marvel Stadium, because it's at Marvel, I'd actually think we're all half a chance. I think Marvel Stadium will suit our style that Drew wants us to play us perfectly. Under a roof, fast track. There's going to be no rain anywhere because, there's a roof on the stadium. So I actually think this is a good game to test this strategy that Dew, or this style that Dew wants to play. This is a good place to do it. Obviously, you want the opposition to be maybe a bit less ferocious than the Bulldogs are at the moment. They're absolutely ripping teams apart at the moment. But I think this is a game where we've just got to batten down the hatches and not get blown off the park. We can't afford to be blown off the park. If we could keep it to 5 or 6 goals, as depressing as that sounds, I think I would almost take that. Yeah, it's just one of those games where I think that we've got to go out, and who knows, we might be a bit closer towards the end of the game. We might be able to go for it, but I feel like this is one that we can sort of just let's work on it. Let's not worry so much about the Bulldogs, and let's worry about developing us and sort of working on that game plan. And then next week against Sydney, who we saw against the Bombers aren't completely infallible. At Metricon, we might be half a chance in that game.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. We might leave that there. Thank you, as always, to listening to Turn Over the Tape of Gold Coast Suns podcast. Hopefully the audio wasn't too bad. It didn't sound too bad on my end, but hopefully it comes through the podcast okay. And hopefully we'll have a sort of a more developed what's the word I'm looking for? Solution. That's the word. More developed solution for next week. And hopefully we'll get back to that crisp audio that we had earlier. As always, thank you, Matt. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, no problem.
No problem. And we will see you next week.